All right, let's talk a little bit about what is a spousal consent form. All right, spousal consents are usually going to be something that comes up in the context of you just started a business, an LLC or a corporation, and you have partners in that business, and maybe you or some of the partners have a spouse. Well, in situations where divorce, death, or disability arise for one of the partners, usually a spouse is going to be given some type of control over the assets of that partner in the business that suffered that life event. And for the other partners in the business, so let's say you're a partner in a business and your other business partner passes away, or worse yet, gets divorced. And in that divorce proceeding, that business partner, their 50% of your company, the judge decides that 25% of that 50% goes to that now ex-spouse of your business partner, because that spouse, when they were still together, supported them, your business partner supported them during the running of the business. And in community property states like this one, California, that is a legitimate possibility that could happen. So you, as the business partner of that person that's now getting divorced, you don't want to now have a 25% partner with the partner you've always had and a 25% partner with their now ex-spouse that could presumably be quite disgruntled. So a spousal consent form is very important then for you to avoid that situation. Why? How does that happen? Well, a spousal consent form is usually going to be signed at the same time you and your business partners are signing your initial governance paperwork, your shareholder agreement, your operating agreement for your LLC. And with that document, when you receive your ownership in your company, the spouse of anybody that's receiving ownership, your spouse, the business partner's spouse, should sign the spousal consent form at that same time. And what the spousal consent form says is essentially that in one of those situations, those hypothetical, hopefully never happen, future situations, if a divorce court, a testate court for trusts and wills for someone that passes away or is disabled, decides to award all of the ownership or a portion of the ownership of a business partner to their spouse or now ex-spouse, the spousal consent says if that spouse originally signed it, that instead of receiving that ownership in the company, they will take something in lieu of that is the equivalent value instead of the ownership. So, in a divorce proceeding, for instance, there's going to be a lot of bargaining chips on the table, right? Cars, houses, bank accounts, assets, boats, stocks. I don't know. This is apparently a family that did really well. All these different bargaining chips are on the table. And so another one of those bargaining chips is the ownership in the company that the partner, that business owner had. And so instead of saying, okay, that now ex-spouse gets that ownership or a portion of that ownership, they can take a car or stocks or a boat instead that is the equivalent value of the ownership in the business. And so really a spousal consent is almost like a prenup, but not between the people that are married, but between the other business partners and those spouses of the business partners that they have. Now, I think a spousal consent is great. I think it is an excellent thing to have in place because that spouse at that later time, or the estate rather, in a death or a disability, still gets something of equivalent value, but the business partners now don't have a new partner in the business that they have to contend with. But in the event that there is no spousal consent, or for whatever reason it's ignored or voided or something like that, and the estate or the spouse does get ownership in the company, the way that we draft our language in our governance documents, those LLC operating agreements, those corporation shareholder agreements, we draft that in a way that any of that ownership that's received in that sort of legal transaction, that legal proceeding by matter of course, it's only an economic interest, meaning that they don't get voting rights with that interest that they're assigned by legal default at that later time. They only get the rights to profits and losses, so that then they can't come in and bulldoze the control of the company. So, spousal consent, it is a document that seeks to require that a spouse or an estate later on upon a divorce or a death or a disability is willing and required to accept something of equivalent value in place of ownership in a business, so that the remaining business owners do not now have a forced new partner that they were not partners with originally. And that, my friends, is the purpose and the value of a spousal consent. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that your business runs on forever and ever and ever and you don't even need it, but you should sign it and have your spouse sign it at the beginning just in case.